Hello, students. Myself Joshi Disha, and I warmly welcome you on behalf of Sri Shivsha College of Commerce, Management, and Computer Education, and it is managed by Jain Citizens Education Society. As in the last session, we had studied the nature of production function. Today, we are going to study the types of production function. So, here are the types of production function. Number one, production function of proportionate returns. When the returns are availed in proportion to inputs increased, when we are getting returns by increasing our inputs means factors of production, the factors of production that we were saying in the traditional manner, that were land, labor, capital, etc. They were the factors of production. So by increasing the inputs, when we are getting more returns, it is called law of proportionate returns. At this time, production function is called the proportionate returns production function. So, number one, production function of proportionate returns, in that we are increasing the proportion of inputs that we can say as factors of production or raw materials. By increasing that, we are getting higher returns. It is known as law of proportionate returns and called the proportionate returns production function. Number two, production function of diminishing returns. Let me explain you the meaning of diminishing returns. Diminishing means decreasing. So, production function of diminishing returns, when the proportion of inputs used is high but the output is less in proportion to inputs used, it is called production function diminishing returns. When we are using more inputs but as a result we are getting less outputs, that is called production function of diminishing returns. Diminishing means decreasing, so but naturally there is concept related to decreasing something. So here we need to understand that when we are using more inputs, still we are getting less output. It is known as a law of diminishing returns or production function of diminishing returns. The law that applies here is that of law of diminishing returns. The law that is applicable over here is known as law of diminishing returns. More inputs and less output. Number third, production function of increasing returns. When the proportion of input is more than the proportion of inputs used. So, when the proportion of outputs is more than the proportion of inputs used, it is called law of increasing returns. In this, we are using less output. In this we are using less inputs. Still, we are getting more output. That is called the law of increasing returns. More output and with the use of less inputs. The production function is called production function of increasing returns. So firstly, it was stated in the first one, it was that with the use of more inputs, we were getting more outputs. That was production function of proportionate returns. Second was production function of diminishing returns. In that we were using more inputs but still we were getting less output. And the third one is production function of increasing returns. In this we are using less inputs, still we are getting more outputs. Now let us examine the mathematical forms of all the three production functions. As we know, the normal formula of production function that we had studied earlier. It is P is equals to F into bracket A. P is the output and A is the input. This we had studied earlier. Here a production function is given below, that is P is equals to F into bracket A, comma B, comma C, comma D, comma E. So this we had already studied. As I stated earlier, P is the output and A, B, C, D and E are different types of inputs. Now let us examine production function with proportionate returns. This was the normal mathematical formulae of production function. Now this we are going to study on the basis of production functions with proportionate returns. These three types of returns were there. On the basis of that we are going to study this formulae. If all the five inputs A, B, C, D and E increase up to n, we are increasing inputs up to n. In output also there is increase up to n. In the similar type also, output is going to increase up to n. Whenever we are increasing inputs up to n, definitely we are going to increase outputs up to n. Thus production function can be written as follows: NP is equals to F into bracket NA, comma NB, comma NC, comma ND, comma NE. So this is the formula when we are increasing inputs up to n, and as a result we get increase of output up to n. This kind of production function is linear and homogeneous production function. Linear means straight. This kind of production function is straight. Linear means straight and homogeneous means similar kind of, or we can say uniform, means similar kind of a production function. So this kind of production function is linear, that is straight, and homogeneous production function. Homogeneous means similar kind of. It is also called homogeneous production function of first degree. It can be written as follows. Let us take a look over formulae. N raised to z. It is not n z, it is n raised to z. N raised to z into p is equal to f into bracket na, comma nb, comma nc, comma nd, comma ne. So this is the way it is written. And now we are going to take a look that if z is equal to 1, it is proportionate returns production function. As we had studied that whatever inputs we are using, we are getting that much output. Means z is equal to 1. It is proportionate returns of production function. If z is greater than 1, it is production functions of increasing return. Z is greater than 1, then it is increasing returns. And if z is less than 1, it is production function of diminishing returns. When it is less than 1 means input is more and output is less. It is production function of diminishing returns. So let us study again. When z is equal to 1, it is proportionate returns production function. Z is greater than 1, it is production function of increasing returns. And if z is less than 1, it is production function of diminishing returns. So these were different types of production functions, and these are really very important. So take a look over it. So this was all about today's session. In the next session, we are going to start short-term production. In that, we are going to study law of diminishing returns. So this was all about today. So thank you, students. Have a good day.